Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, going to be going through our Week 6 must-add waiver wire pickups. All right, so in this episode, we're going to talk about 5 players that we think you should go get on your waiver wire. Joe, who's the first one?
Yeah, first guy we're going to go with here is wide receiver Kendrick Bourne of the San Francisco 49ers. You may have forgotten about Kendrick Bourne because they played Thursday night, but he came off a monster performance. Given the absence of Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall on that offense, he had 11 targets, 10 catches, 142 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but for PPR scoring, good enough for 24.2 points. He's only rostered in 6.5% of ESPN leagues. A lot of people thought, Demarcus Robinson would be the benefactor in this game, or, some other interesting guys, but really just Kendrick Bourne, a really interesting the connection that he had with Mac Jones in that game as well. And it's just something to monitor. I mean, if Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are going to continue to be out, maybe even, Brock Purdy's iffy as well. I know Mac Jones got dinged up, but they do get a little bit of extra rest being that they did play on Thursday night. But I think if Mac Jones is still in there and if those other guys are out, I think Kendrick Bourne might just be one of the favorite targets of Mac Jones at this point. And I do think, even if those guys do come back, I think Bourne is an interesting ad, just knowing that he could be kind of the next man up and kind of the stash at this point. So, as for terms of FAAB to get him, being that you're chasing the points, you're probably going to have to go, probably about 10%.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing when it comes to Bourne. In comparison to the other receivers, he's the healthiest guy.
Right.
And that means something, right? I mean, Tom Brady even said it on the broadcast this week, which I think he was talking about Jaden Daniels. But he said, at the end of the day, durability is more important than ability. If you can't be on the field, what does it matter what your ability is? You've always kind of said that, Joe. So I think at the end of the day, if Bourne's healthy, and I really like him with Mac Jones too. You got to remember, those two have familiarity back at their days in New England. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, we should have saw it coming that he was going to be the beneficiary. I was one of those people who thought Demarcus Robinson was going to be that player that was going to get, maybe get, more involved in the game plan, be the guy who really had the most productive game. But he really didn't, which was quite a surprise.
Yeah, I think it was logical to think that. I mean, Demarcus Robinson was another healthy body in this game. I thought he would at least get more looks, but I mean, the fact that Jones just continually went to Kendrick Bourne, and I mean, it worked. I mean, caught it 10 of 11 targets, which was a really nice game for him to have.
Well, and you got the revenge game narrative too, right? With Robinson playing his old team, the Rams, but at the end of the day, Bourne was the guy, and I think he's going to be the guy you want. That Niners offense is kind of in tatters right now, but again, he's the one healthy guy. So, other than McCaffrey, believe it or not.
I know it is crazy. Everyone was worried about McCaffrey coming in with the injury history of last year and everything, and he's still standing, but guys around him are just falling apart at this point.
All right, so the next player we're going to be talking about here is running back Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers. He had a fantastic game, Joe, and for those out there, I hope you went ahead and picked him up when the news with Chuba Hubbard missing the game, when we heard that fit being official, because he had 23 carries, 206 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. Also had 4 targets, 3 catches for 28 yards. Honestly, it's kind of surprised me because they brought in Kenneth Grant, the Miami Dolphins did, who was well-renowned at Michigan as a run-stuffing nose tackle type. I would have thought that they would be much better defending against the run. I don't understand why they are so bad. But, maybe if I was a Dolphins fan and I watched all the games, maybe I could speak to it. But it's not good. But Rico had a fantastic game. Now, you may say, okay, he's a little bit more higher rostered. ESPN is a little bit less than Sleeper. He's 71%. You're going to chase points on this. You're going to probably have to pay 10%. But the tough part is we don't know if Chuba Hubbard's going to play or not next week. And you got the Dallas Cowboys, which that'd be Rico Dowdle's former team. It's just a cupcake matchup for him. So I don't know, Joe. Part of me would say maybe you go for the gusto and get this guy in hopes that Chuba Hubbard can't play, because I think it's a real possibility that he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you're desperate at the running back position, you definitely could go for the gusto, especially, there are going to be teams on bye. Not sure who those are exactly, but those also, could create holes in your roster that you got to go fill. And if Chuba Hubbard is in fact out, I mean, Rico Dowdle's shown it. I mean, you mentioned a revenge game narrative. Even without that, I mean, he's going to get the bulk of the workload there as he did this week. And just another matchup, saw Breece Hall really take advantage of a lot of running lanes against the Cowboys this past week. And I think Dowdle would be a great start if Chuba Hubbard's in fact out. All right, so our next player is going to be tight end Darren Waller of the Miami Dolphins. And if you didn't go out and get this guy after the 2 touchdown performance against the Jets, you really need to make sure you can go out and get him now. Followed up that performance with 5 targets, 5 catches, 78 yards, and another touchdown. He averaged 15.6 yards per reception in this game. And just, we saw it with Jonnu Smith last year, how the Dolphins just really love to utilize the tight end position. Tyreek Hill done for the year. I really do think, as crazy as it sounds, because I thought when Darren Waller came out of retirement with the Dolphins, I thought he was going to be kind of irrelevant, but he's actually been looking pretty good. And he's only rostered in 48.2% of ESPN links, despite him having the 2 touchdowns against the Jets. So I would say you definitely need to go out and get him at this point. And I think you could I'd be aggressive and possibly go, 10, 20% on this guy.
Yeah, I actually went aggressive last week. I think I did went 20% in some of the leagues that you and I are in, Joe, which ultimately I feel like that worked out in my favor. I didn't know if I was chasing the points, whether he would continue, but we thought with Tyreek Hill going out for the year, it was probably going to be Waller and Waddle that really ended up being the beneficiaries there, and it showed against this Panthers team.
Yeah, I mean, Waller was really one of the reasons I wasn't excited about a guy like Malik Washington, who people are wondering if he could take that next step with Hill going out. But I was like, just given that everything Achane did in the receiving game and what Jonnu Smith last year did, I was just nervous about Darren Waller. And sure enough, like that utilization does seem available to him.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I got to say, Joe, props to you to holding yourself accountable, because I didn't know if you were going to fess up and say that you were not excited about this guy, because in our dynasty league, Paul signed Darren Waller for a decent amount of money, and you're like, what is Paul doing? Why is he getting this guy? So, no, you're eating crow on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I call it as I see it, man.
All right, so we got a Steve special going with tight end Mason Taylor. This is the guy who I'm putting in there, not necessarily Joe. Here's a trick question for you, Joe. Out of all the tight ends in the National Football League, which tight end leads tight ends in targets? Who do you think that is?
Well, being that you're asking the question, it could be Mason Taylor. I mean, I would assume it's Mason Taylor, but I think it could be Jake Ferguson.
It's Mason Taylor, Joe. That's why I said it's a trick question for you.
Yeah.
You kind of passed it, but you kind of didn't. I mean, if you look at him, Joe, he had 12 targets, 9 catches for 67 yards against Dallas Cowboys, which I know was somewhat in garbage time. But look at the game previously at Miami, right? 7 targets, 5 catches, 65 yards. So he's becoming more and more involved in the offense. His role is growing. And I think at the end of the day, when you think about rookies, they don't instantaneously become these starters or stars in fantasy. It takes them a while to develop. I think we're starting to see that. If you look at the Jets offense as a whole, outside Garrett Wilson, who do they really have? They don't even really have a second receiver. Other than Breece Hall, I think Mason Taylor is going to become that second option. So if they're continuing to look his way, I think it could be very promising for Mason Taylor going forward. For a tight end position, that could be very frustrating. Why not go ahead? Probably 2 or 5%. You're not going to have to spend that much for him. Go for a guy like Mason Taylor.
I mean, at this point, I think you could do a lot worse for the 2 to 5% than a guy like Mason Taylor. I mean, like you mentioned, he's definitely getting the targets and utilization. And it seems like when the Jets, have to have a play, he's either going to Garrett Wilson or, like you said, number 2 option definitely seems like Mason Taylor at this point. And honestly, they got, they're playing in London against the Broncos. Broncos aren't the best against tight ends. Saw Dallas Goedert get a touchdown. I honestly was kind of surprised that the Eagles didn't try to target Goddard more. I mean, tight end position has been an issue for the Broncos, and they always seem to be one of the worst teams against tight ends. So I do think Mason Taylor could be in for a good week even this upcoming week here. All right, so our last guy, going to be another tight end here, guy that Steve's not that excited about.
A Joe Special. Yeah, you didn't mention that, Joe.
It's my turn for a Joe Special here. We're going with Jake Tonges of the San Francisco 49ers, coming off an 11 target performance, 7 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He's got a touchdown in 3 of the 5 weeks thus far. And honestly, that's at this point. I mean, if you start a tight end and they get a touchdown, I mean, they're going to be one of the top guys on the week. I mean, that's just the way tight end position really works, especially with a guy like Brock Bowers, George Kittle on IR as well. And you at least get, I feel like, one more week out of Tonjes here. I think it's rumored that George Kittle could possibly be back in week 7. But even if not, I mean, if you're George Kittle owner, you might just want to hold this guy just in case, Kittle gets re-injured. But talking about Tonjes, despite him having, decent utilization, getting some touchdowns on the season, only 5.3% rostered on ESPN. Not a guy that you're going to go have to spend a ton on. But last week I called out Theo Johnson. He had 2 touchdowns in his first, full week with the neighbors being gone. And I think you go ahead and take a flyer on Jake Tonges and, throw out there, maybe even just try to get him for $1.
I was going to say, I was going to give you credit if you didn't. You had the last Joe Special was Theo Johnson before the 2 touchdown performance. So kudos to you. So Joe knows what he's talking about with the Joe Special. So better get on to the Jake Tonges trade before it leaves the station here.
Yeah, and just one thing I forgot. They got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, and just saw a guy like AJ Barner coming off of a 2 touchdown game against them. So I do think the path is there for Tonjes to be good with the matchup.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our Week 6 must-add waiver wire pickups. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode. We went ahead and talked about our Dynasty Salary Cap League, and it was a fire sale. One of our managers in the league said, hey, I'm going to be selling my team. In preview, we have another one who just came out and said that they are also looking to make everybody available. So it's getting really interesting in our Dynasty Salary Cap League. You're going to want to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.